Today we're replacing the alternator on this 2005 Mercedes-Benz CL55 AMG. I'm going to walk you through the steps that I go through when replacing this alternator, so let's go ahead and get started. So diving into it, both serpentine belts are going to need to be removed. I'm also going to need to remove this dual idler pulley right here. I'm also going to be pulling the water pump pulley just to give myself a little bit of extra room. I have to drain the coolant from the radiator because I need to remove the fan, and both radiator hoses, both upper and lower hoses, need to be removed. The reason is I'm replacing this upper radiator hose anyways. It has a bit of a leak, and the lower radiator hose needs to be moved out of the way just to give myself enough room to get that alternator up and out the top. First thing first, I'm going to disconnect my battery, prevent any chance of any sort of electrical shock while I'm working around the alternator. One note that I want to make about these serpentine belt tensioners: you've got two belts on this vehicle, one specifically for the supercharger and then your accessory belt down here behind it. So these are 12.17 millimeters, and I've got this little pin inserted right here. And what that will allow me to do that allows me to lock the tensioner into a service position so I can remove and install my serpentine belt without any tension. So I have a lot of these pins left over in different diameters because I've done so many of these tensioners. They always come with a new pin installed. I always make sure to remove them and save them for future use. So just giving you all a heads up on where I'm at. I've got both serpentine belts off. I've got the fan out. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of cardboard up against this radiator to prevent any damage to any of the pins. I've got my alternator almost ready to come out, just the two bolts that are holding it in. And it should come out forward, out the front, and then up the top. All right, so you can see I got my cardboard in place, and I was able to get that alternator up and out through the front. I did have to move a couple of these radiator hoses out of the way. You can see over here I've got the original. A couple of minor differences in the positioning of the regulator, but that shouldn't make too much of a difference. We should be able to install it just fine. One note that I want to make about this water pump pulley: I'm using the special blue point tool, and what this will do is this will hook on to the bolts so that way I can go through and tighten them, and it'll just provide me with a little bit of resistance. The other thing you can do if you don't have this tool is break them loose and tighten them up with the belt installed. Just get them finger tight for now, and then once you've got the belt on, you can tighten them. So I've got the new alternator installed. I've got my connections made on the back. Water pump pulley is in. Next, I've got to do the tensioner pulley, get that one back installed, and start doing some of these coolant hoses. right, so we've got our fan installed, we've got everything back in place, all of our hoses along the bottom are reconnected, clips are installed, everything seems to be mounted correctly. You can see that I have my new upper radiator hoses on there, and it looks pretty flat because currently I am pressure testing the system, making sure it holds vacuum before I go through and fill it. This is definitely a job that requires some patience, and you have to take your time doing it to make sure everything's done correctly. Once I've got my cooling system pressure tested and refilled, I'll hop in the vehicle, start it up, make sure we're charging the battery correctly. All right, so I've got my cooling system pressure tested. I've got everything reinstalled under the hood. I've got my air filters back in place along with the intake tracks. I've got the front cover off right here just for now. And I've got my battery connected in the back, along with my voltmeter plugged into it. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a start. So we saw it start up. We saw that alternator initially charged the battery to about 14.4, 14.5 volts. So this alternator job is done and finished. I've got a couple more things to finish up for some of the other repairs. And I just want to say thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you in the next one.